Dear Ma'am Marijo, it was such an honor being your student, ma'am. I will never forget your classes and know that I wouldn't have traded it for anything else. My understanding is that you've been doing this for quite some time now, and yet it seems like in that classroom, you're still the most excited among all of us.
I had this teacher in high school whom I admired so much. And she was my physics teacher, so actually I wanted to be in physics. But since I started to do college in College of the Holy Spirit and there was no physics course there at the time, there was a math course, there was a chemistry course. I chose to do the math. But after 2 years, my father had this idea that I should widen my horizons and he wanted me to study abroad. So I got accepted to Marymount Manhattan College and I did the degree in math. When it was time to decide on a career, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was 21. So what I did was I applied to companies in the Philippines. Mostly these were computer companies. Then as a backup, I applied to Ateneo. And why Ateneo? Because as a college student, I was a fan of the basketball team. So when I started teaching, I was one of the first women to teach here. It was a big deal for the students to have a woman to teach them. And then I came with this Mustang. And well, I was only 2 years older than them. So I could really relate to them. And I think at some point, after a few years, I decided this was the career that I would stay with because the students, I could see that the students appreciated me.
Joe is really a teacher at heart. She's very, very good at it. She's taught mathematics since she came here in the late 60s. So in those years, she was really kind of one of the 3 or 4 faculty members who were the anchors of the math department. She's a very demanding teacher, but she's a very good teacher. It's very clear. So the students really learn, but she demands.
Among the things that I remember about Mary Jo is her amazing ability to simplify a difficult subject like operations research, even for supposed to be nerds like us in ME. So it was relatively easy for us to understand this difficult subject.
Math is beautiful, but it wasn't easy for me. I had to work hard to understand. When I started teaching, I used to prepare 4 hours for every hour of class. That's because I had to understand the lesson and imagine every question that the students might ask.
In my last year in college, I took instead my elective in philosophy. When assessment came, I was told I could not graduate because my elective wasn't authorized. So in panic, full of anxiety, I went to Mary Jo, who was then the department chairperson of ME, for help. And she calmly told me that I didn't have to worry, and she wrote a letter to the assessor's office saying she allowed me to take philosophy as my elective.
The profession of teaching is such a man for others kind of profession, and the results aren't seen immediately. Like what we say is teachers really plant the seeds, waiting for them to grow into trees after so many years. And I think that's precisely what Dr. Mary Jo has done for generations of ME students.
She has formed a whole generation of students in mathematics and management engineering who are now leaders in their own fields. And I think that if you talk to them, they would say that, of course, they learned the mathematics, but they also learned those values of excellence, but also values of caring for the students and helping them.
I see her as a role model, as a leader, but as a colleague, a senior colleague too, I also see her as a role model, not only because of passion for work, but also knowing when it's time to slowly detach herself from the Ateneo, to do other things and to give way to younger people. Mary Jo is a very giving person, I think. I think she has brought her children very well, as those who are friends with her know. And she is very generous with her time.
So that combination of clear-sightedness and I guess sticking to the directions, but also making sure that you listen and bringing everybody into the process. So I think that's what makes a good leader. The whole university trusts her judgment. So she has been a chair of very important committees in the university where because we're sure that she'll be even-handed and she'll keep the goals of the values we have plus care for people.
I don't know what the future will hold for me, ma'am. It is something that I don't think mathematics nor operations research can explain. But if there's one thing that I learned from attending your classes and seeing you work your magic day in and day out in front of your students, it would be to actively seek out what I love doing and to do it to the best of my abilities, emulating how you are in front of your classroom. I'll never forget what you've done for me, and I hope that you continue to touch young people's lives in the future.
Well, math is so beautiful. If I start, I won't be able to stop.